Hello, everybody. My name is Max Steinberg. I'm a partner at SaberSim and a daily fantasy professional. And I'm here to bring you a video that sort of builds upon this video that we just put up on our YouTube page that's called The 6 Secrets of Daily Fantasy Baseball, where we talk about the real keys to beating DFS baseball. And I want to make a video just sort of showing you how I implement those secrets into my lineup building process so you can see how these actually really work in real time, right? So the first thing I'm going to do and how I start off every, day when playing daily fantasy baseball is I'm just going to do a sort of pre-test build just to see what kind of players we're getting, see what kind of lineups we're getting. And that's going to be something that we're going to be able to work off of later, right? So using some default settings for 20 max GPP, these are things that we've carefully picked out for you. So that's why I use them. We're going to build your lineups, right? And so just to emphasize, this is a video, and while these lineups are building, just to talk about this is a video that is for people who've really mastered the basics of using our product, right? If you haven't, I recommend watching some of the videos on our YouTube page to get used to some of the features so you can understand some of these sliders like correlation, ownership, faded, smart diversity, why you don't have to use things like groups or other things or stacking rules which we have available, but you don't really actually have to use them when using our product to get familiar with what we're all about, right? So I'm going to just assume that you sort of have an understanding of this, right? So one of the first secrets we talk about in this video is starting with stacks, right? Stacking is the cornerstone of building any baseball lineup because players of baseball are correlated, pretty correlated, in fact. But what is really important is that player correlations kind of stack on top of each other in baseball because they're all the players are correlated with each other, right? So if player A is correlated with player B and correlated A and B, player A and B are correlated with player C, then those correlations build upon each other, and it makes it really smart to do things like stacking. And so you'll see when you build your lineups, almost actually every lineup you build is some form of stack, whether it's a 5 stack, 5-3 stack, where this is where you're literally just stacking up two teams, or something like a 4-4, or all of these lineups are stacks, right? So the reason for this is just what makes good lineups because of this correlation. That's going to raise the upside of your lineups because your players are going to score together. So start with stacks. Our product's going to do that for you. Don't worry about it. But we're going to try to add value to this process the rest of the way, right? So one of the other secrets is optimize for overperformance. And that's something that we try to do with SaberSim that we also really help you with, right? So we built your lineups on 3 separate factors: smart diversity, correlation, ownership fade. Correlation and smart diversity have to do with stats that we get from our simulator, and smart diversity is sort of a range of outcomes type statistic that's going to really capture the upside of your players. Correlation is correlation. Ownership fade, it's going to capture how much are your players going to get owned. Do you want to use these players less because they're going to be high owned, or are these players a specific diamond in the rough that you might want more? And then we quantify all of that with Saber score, and your best lineup is always going to get a Saber score of 100. So this is the lineup that we've determined, given your settings, is going to be the most optimal lineup for the contest you're entering with all the settings, so on and so forth, considering all these factors, right? So this is really great, right? This is going to help us optimize our lineups for these types of lineups that can really win GBPs, right? And so what all you really need to worry about, and all I'm really worrying about, is changing these projections and changing maybe even ownership projections that are going to allow you to really get the most give us the optimal information to really give you what the top lineups are given what we think and what you think, right? And I'm going to talk about how to actually adjust projections and adjusting ownership projections later, but I've done this a little bit and I'll talk about it in a little bit. But basically, one part of SaberSim that might be different than a different optimizer is adjusting these projections or even adjusting these ownership projections is going to help you a lot. It's going to really add value to this process. So if you can find a way to do that really well, which I'll talk about in a little bit, then that's going to help you a lot, and it's going to help optimize your lineups, right? So one of the other secrets is be willing to take risks, right? So let's just look at some of the exposures that we're getting in our lineups, right? So one thing that you're going to see right off the bat is, if we look at the team stacks, is we get a lot of Dodgers. Now, why is that? Well, the reason is because the Dodgers are a Coors Field. Coors Field is a really great run environment. The Dodgers are a really good hitting team. And so their projections are just sky high. You can see a player like Cody Bellinger has a 12.25 projection, whereas someone maybe on, even on Colorado, it's more like an 8. These are really, really high projections. It's hard for other players to get this high because the Dodgers are so good and there's such a good run environment, right? So we're getting a lot of Dodgers, and you can see, actually, if we just look at the pitchers quickly, you can see, why are we able to do this so easily? Well, DraftKings did not set these pitcher salaries that well, and that means guys like Tyler Glasnow, Brandon Woodruff, Luis Castillo, even Kyle Hendricks are priced low enough where you can kind of use two of these guys, which no one's going to really mind. These are some of the top pitchers on the slate. And it's going to allow you to basically stack Dodgers however you want, right? And so this takes me to sort of one of the other secrets of daily fantasy baseball, which we say is be willing to take risk, right? So you can see here that the Dodgers are going to be a popular stack. Probably Tyler Glasnow, who's really popular pitcher, is going to be very popular. And someone like Brandon Woodruff might be very popular, right? And so you can look at here and say, okay, this is interesting, right? Maybe there's an opportunity to take a risk here. And with someone like Tyler Glasnow, who's going to be 24% owned, he might even be higher. We'll talk about that in a bit. Maybe we're actually going to want to try to stack against him, right? So maybe we can look at someone from Miami and raise their exposure a little bit. Someone like Starling Marte, who steals some bases. And then maybe we can just sort of try to add some Miami stacks here, right? So if we raise these guys a couple of these guys a bit, we're suddenly going to probably have a Miami stack, right? And maybe we can add a couple Miami 3 stacks, right? And then I can actually just lower the minimums on these players, and I'll let SaberSim decide for me what these 3 stacks could be, right? And so these are going to be lineups that are not going to have Tyler Glasnow, and we're going to be leveraged against him, right? So this is something you can do in the post-build process to be like, okay, here's some risk that I might take with my 20 lineups to get some leverage on Tyler Glasnow, who might be pretty high owned, right? Or maybe you can find a diamond in the rough team, right? Some team that we're naturally actually getting quite a bit is the Orioles, right? The Orioles are at Fenway Park, which is really good hitting park. They have an organization that is their GMs from Houston. They know about home runs, strikeouts, things like that. They try to hit for power, right? They swing a lot. And so this is a team that I might say, they seem actually like a decent stack. We have guys like Mancini, Freddie Galvis, Ryan Mountcastle, about 6% ownership. The Orioles are usually not a popular team, so that might be a little high. So you can sort of raise their min exposure a bit, right? You can say, okay, we have 10% Orioles 4 stacks. Let's get 20% Orioles 4 stacks. And these are ways where you can balance your lineups a little bit and also take some risks, right? And this is going to be really great in the post-build process to hone this in, right? So another secret we have is take advantage of variance. And so one thing we talk about is how pitcher variance and hitter variance are different, right? Pitchers' performance is more predictable than hitter performance, right? And so this is something that you can do in the post-build process where you can say, okay, I am getting a lot of Woodruff and Glasnow, right? I'm getting a lot of Castillo. I'm getting all these guys, right? And you can say, okay, you know what? I can sort of hone in my pitcher exposure a bit. Maybe Brad Keller, he's not that high strikeout guy. Let me just get rid of him, right? And tighten up this pitcher exposure a little bit. Let's maybe get rid of someone like Jack Flaherty. Let's maybe, I really like Brandon Woodruff. I think he'll be lower owned than Class now. And Minnesota can strike out a lot. He's at home. So I can raise my exposure here and just make sure I'm getting sort of more of the guys I really like, right? Same way with hitter exposures, right? We have a lot of Dodgers. We've talked about this already. 90% of our stacks are Dodger stacks. And, as much as the Dodgers are probably going to score some, they can fail a lot. And so maybe with some of these Dodger 4 stacks, we can lower this a little bit and make sure that we just don't get too much of them. Because if we do, it might really, really screw us. And we don't want to take that risk. And they're probably going to be pretty popular anyway. So let's just take advantage of that variance that way. And then let's talk about the last thing, leveraging all kinds of data. So I talked about before how when you're using SaberSim, the best thing that you can do is make it so when we build our lineups for you, using our simulation data, using this correlation data, using this ownership fade data, that we have the best information possible so we can build you really the best lineups, right? And so your top lineups are going to be your real top lineups. And you're going to do that by going back to this reviewing projection step and adjusting player projections and also adjusting ownership projections. And I think let's start with ownership projections first, because I think this is something that a lot of people overlook, but it's a way they can add value really easily, right? Because data can be found from anywhere, right? It's not just like StatCast or whatever. There's data on Twitter. There's data on other sites. There's one thing that I used to do a few years ago is I just look at some of these sites and look at what player was on their homepage, right? And I actually tested it out, and it turned out the players that were on the homepage of some of these popular sites were actually more popular than we were predicting, right? So you can sort of leverage that as well, and you can look at Twitter, see who people are touting, and also you can, once you do this a lot, you kind of get a feel, right? There's some players that are just inherently more popular because of their names, and two of those players I think for opening day are going to be Glasnow and Yu Darvish. Tyler Glasnow throws 100 miles an hour. If you haven't seen him, it's pretty impressive. He's going against Miami, is a terrible team, and I think he's going to be very, very popular. He's just a guy that people like to play, and he's too cheap, right? And so we have him at 24% ownership. And by the way, close to the opening day, our model, the inputs might get a little better, and this might change or go up. But this is someone where I'm going to say, okay, I'm seeing so many tweets about this. I'm seeing touts talk about him. I'm seeing everyone talk about him. I think he's going to be more like 35% owned, right? And maybe Yu Darvish, right? He's a buzzy player. People just like him. He's a name player. So, and people in general like to use expensive pitchers. They want more of a safe bet. So he's someone as well that could raise his ownership projection as well. And what this is going to do is when our lineup builder builds your lineups again, it's going to optimize partly for ownership fade, and it's going to give you probably less of these players because their ownerships are going to be pretty high, and it's going to really make sure that the 20 lineups you build or whatever amount of lineups you're building are truly the best lineups given all these factors that you care about, right? And then let's talk about leveraging data for projections, right? I think there's a lot of ways to do this, and one thing I emphasize in our 6 secrets video that you can find on your YouTube is try to leverage data that is not going to double count, right? Is our model is based on a lot of factors with historical data. Matt talks about it in the video. Umpires, weather, spring training data, like basically anything you can think of, right? But not everything. But if you do something like go to some website and it says, oh, this umpire, 0.3 more runs are scored historically when this umpire umps. Well, first of all, that's a terrible statistic. And second of all, we're taking that to account better. So please don't try to add value to our projections in that way. But, there are other ways, right? There's a lot of people who come from fan graphs who do real deep dives into some player stats and can show you, oh, this player's actually added a pitch. This player might be injured. This guy, Jeff Zimmerman, is someone who comes from Fangraphs who is really good. And one of the, I think, best things you can do is just look for players who have some sort of change in the offseason, whether it's a pitch change or they may have been injured in the previous season and or have recovered now or something like that, and use that to adjust their projection, right? Darvish is someone who, he's always working on his game. And I kind of like him this year. He's added some pitches, and I think he's gone to a better organization in San Diego than he's been in the past. And he has elite stuff. So he's someone I like. Nathan Eovaldi just historically goes a ton of innings, and I think he will. John Means, Jeff Zimmerman, great follow. You can see that he's spring training fastball has been a little less than it has been before. So that's something we take into account, but I get the sense he might be injured. So I'm going to weigh it a little more. And that's some way you can adjust projections, right? Another way is you can actually go to StatCast, right? They have some really good stats. You can actually search spring training stats. You can look at good stats like barrels, something that might be predictive of something. Maybe someone has a really good sprint speed in the spring. There's lots of stuff to look at. And this is something that you're going to be able to add to your projections. And this is going, and also, didn't even think of this. Look at the line movements, right? Go to some of the major sports books, look at what the lines are now, look at what the lines are Thursday morning, see how they've moved. You can do things like adjust then these team projections, apply the changes, and this is going to adjust projections on a team level. And that's going to be that's another way that you can do things. So there are a lot of ways. There's a lot of data out there, right? Leveraging that data and making your projections as good as possible is going to help our product build you some really, really good lineups. So those are basically all of the 6 secrets in action. The last one, the last secret that we talk about is use the right tools. And we really believe that SaberSim is the right tool, especially for daily fantasy baseball. And luckily for you, if you're new to our product, if you're not even that new to our product, tried it a year ago, you can sign up for a free 3-day trial, try us out, see how you like it. Pretty sure you're going to like our product, and see how you like it compared to something else. We've added a lot of new features recently, one of which is our entry editor with late swap. This is going to be something that you can check out a video on it on our YouTube video. This is something that is the very best tool for both the late swap and just managing your entries, making it a lot easier to just go from building lineups to actually putting those lineups on DraftKings, FanDuel, whatever, and then late swapping or quick swapping or doing things to make sure that your lineups are really, truly the best. So try us out, see how you like it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and good luck to all on opening day. Hope you win really big. Thanks for watching, guys.